Paco Rabanne, celebrated designer, dies aged 88. Celebrated perfume and fashion designer Paco Rabanne has died aged 88 at his home in France. His death was confirmed by Puig, the parent company of his brands, which said he had marked generations with his radical vision of fashion and his legacy will live on. Rabanne gained global fame for his eccentric clothing designs. Puig's fashion president, José Manuel Albesa, hailed Rabanne's work, which he said made transgression magnetic. Who else could induce fashionable Parisian women to clamor for dresses made of plastic and metal, Mr. Albesa said. That radical, rebellious spirit set him apart. There's only one Rabanne. Marc Puig, chairman and chief executive officer of Puig, called Rabanne a major personality in fashion and paid tribute to his daring, revolutionary, and provocative vision conveyed through a unique aesthetic. Rabanne was born into a military family in Spain's Basque region near the city of San Sebastian. His father was a colonel in the Republican military who was executed by Gianfrancisco Franco's nationalist forces in 1936 during the Spanish Civil War. His mother, who had worked as a seamstress for the designer Cristobal Balenciaga, moved the family to Paris in 1939 after the nationalist forces seized Madrid and won the war. After growing up in the French capital, Rabanne became an architecture student at l'École Nationale des Beaux-Arts, where he earned money drawing fashion sketches. After a short period working in the construction industry with a concrete manufacturer, he launched his fashion career designing jewelry for Givenchy, Dior, and Balenciaga. Then in 1966, he launched his own eponymous fashion house, Paco Rabanne, which saw him attain international acclaim. His designs attracted both praise and controversy, and his debut collection, entitled 12 Unwearable Dresses in Contemporary Materials, enraged the French fashion press after models were decked out in sharp metals and other unlikely materials. I've always had the impression of being a time accelerator, he said of his designs in 2016. Of going as far as is reasonable for one's time and not indulge in the morbid pleasure of the known things, which I view as decay. In 1968, he signed a deal with the Catalonia-based Puig family, who were heavyweights in the fashion and fragrance industry. The deal marked his entrance into the perfume industry, which would eventually become synonymous with his name. His debut fragrance, Calandre, is still available today, while Lady Million, known for its colorful gold bottles, maintains its grip over the market. His innovations extended to every aspect of his business. He was one of the first fragrance designers to launch one of his products online in the mid-1990s, but he was also known for his provocative outbursts. At various stages, he claimed to have had multiple lives, to have been some 78,000 years old, to have seen God and been visited by aliens. And in 1999, he courted controversy after predicting in his book, Fire from Heaven, that Paris would be destroyed later that year when the Russian space station Mir crashed down to Earth. He said that he'd foreseen the disaster from his reading of the 16th century French astrologer Nostradamus. In 1999, after decades as one of the industry's foremost innovators, Rabanne retired from fashion. Over the next 24 years, he was rarely seen in the public eye. In a statement on Paco Rabanne's official Instagram, the brand hailed him as a visionary and said he was among the most seminal fashion figures of the 20th century. His legacy will remain a constant source of inspiration, it added. Career. Fashion. He started his career in fashion by creating jewelry for Givenchy, Dior, and Balenciaga, and founded his own fashion house in 1966. He used unconventional materials such as metal, paper, and plastic for his metal couture and outlandish and flamboyant designs. For the debut of his namesake brand in 1966, he presented Manifesto, 12 Unwearable Dresses in Contemporary Materials. Rabanne is known for the green costume worn by Jane Fonda in the 1968 science fiction film Barbarella. The singer-songwriter Francoise Hardy was a big fan of Rabanne's designs. For tour 1996 and the resulting Live at Bercy, singer Mylène Farmer had Rabanne do her live concert stage costumes. Fragrance. In 1968, he began collaborating with fragrance company Puig, which resulted in the company marketing Rabanne's perfumes. In 1976, the company built a perfume factory in Chartres, France. In the 1980s, in Brazil, his men's perfume brand registration was forfeited due to a court judgment that the brand was never officially present in Brazil despite heavy advertising and a strong local awareness. The court reasoned that because the Puig's local distributor was smuggling perfume into Brazil, the company could not show proof of payment of import duties. It took 6 or 7 years to recover his brand name in Brazil. In 1994, Rabanne first released his scent called Eccentricities. Paco Rabanne was famous for his eccentric statements on television. He claimed that he'd lived several lives, including that of a prostitute in the name of Louis XV, to have known Jesus in a previous life, to have seen God 3 times, to have been visited by extraterrestrials, to have murdered Tutankhamun, and to be 75,000 years old. In 1999, he announced that at the age of 17, he'd had visions of Parisians in flames throwing themselves into the Seine, and that after studying other concordant prophecies, he came to the conclusion that the Mir space station was going to crash in France at the time of the solar eclipse of August 11, 1999, its debris causing thousands of deaths in Paris and in the Gers region. On 10th of May 1999, he publicly undertakes not to make any more predictions if Mir does not crash into Paris on August 11th, 1999. However, he claimed to have had an apparition of the Virgin Mary telling him to continue the predictions. Despite the failure of this last coup, which tarnished his reputation among the public and the media, he continued to appear regularly in a specialized press, dealing more with the subject of his so-called paranormal experiences than that of the high fashion. Other interests. In 1994, Rabanne wrote the book Has the Countdown Begun? Through Darkness to Enlightenment. In 2005, Rabanne opened in Moscow, Russia, the first exhibition of his drawings. His reasoning for showing the drawings then was, I'm 72 years old, and I wanted to present my drawings this year before disappearing from this planet. I've not shown them to anyone except Salvador Dali 30 years ago, who told me to keep going. One of the black and white sketches depicts a child letting go of a dove and a white balloon into the sky, which he said was inspired by the commemoration ceremony for the 2004 Beslan attack in Beslan, North Ossetia, in which 319 hostages were killed, including 186 children, 12 servicemen, and 31 hostage takers. Rabanne wanted the money that the drawing sold to go for the women of Beslan. In 2006, Rabanne visited Kyiv, Ukraine. He summed up the changes since the Orange Revolution. Ukraine reminds me of a flower unfolding its petals before my very eyes. In the summer of 2012, Aurora was succeeded by the German-Colombian fashion designer Lydia Maurer as chief designer. In mid-2013, Belgian and former Balenciaga designer Julien Docena was appointed creative director of women's wear at Paco Rabanne. Docena's designs were subsequently praised by fashion critics. The ateliers are located in Paris above the flagship store of Nina Ricci, another Puig fashion company, on Avenue Montaigne. In January 2016, a new store opened in Paris, Rue Cambon, following the closure of the remaining Paco Rabanne boutiques more than 10 years earlier. A re-edit of his classic Les 69 bag was relaunched by Comme des Garçons. Paco Rabanne, celebrated designer, last words before he died. Everything that's born has to die, which means our lives are like skyscrapers. The smoke rises at different speeds, but they're all on fire, and we're all trapped.